Welcome to Woman on Her Path. Every woman has her own unique path. But what does that mean? How does said woman know what her path is? How does she find the courage to follow her path? I am your host, Tiffany Cooper. I am a mother, energy worker, community herbalist, and bhakti yogi. By sharing my experiences and insights on my path, I hope to inspire and encourage you on yours. When we follow our path, we find the answers we need in life. Let's find answers together and create a better world for ourselves and those around us. Hello, gorgeous woman. What is going on in your life today? Is there anything you'd like to work on? Any body parts or poses? Wait a minute, I'm not teaching a yoga class. Sorry, I was getting my gigs mixed up. Often before I start a class, I like to ask my students if there is anything that they would like to work on. It gives me an opportunity to tailor the class to what they want. It's also fun to come up with a sequence on the spot or sometimes as we go along to address whatever area of the body they would like to focus on. Inevitably, someone will say that they want to work on abs. Then they get a dirty look from someone else in the class, and I chuckle to myself. Yoga is a brilliant way to get some exercise while learning how to control the mind and connect with a sense of stability. Now, for Patreon patrons of this podcast, the last 2 episodes have been mostly about women taking care of ourselves. And in our last episode, entitled Woman on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, I talked about living a simple life and healing. But I'd like to elaborate more on women and healing, especially when it comes to our mental health. This has been on my mind for quite some time now, primarily because I know that many people are struggling with mental health. All we have to do is check in with the news on any given day, and we can see plenty of evidence of people having such a hard time dealing with their mental health that they go to the end of their ropes and do awful things. Mass shootings, domestic abuse, assault, the list goes on. It has also become very apparent that our law enforcement system is not fully equipped to handle mental health situations. Law enforcement is based on policing people and training officers for worst-case scenario or violent situations and the physical aspects of them. It seems mental health, the key part of what drives someone to perpetuate the worst-case scenario or violent situation, is left out of the equation. That is not to blame the system. We all learn and evolve with the knowledge that we have. But to look at the improvements that must be made for the betterment of us all, the system, and the citizens who are vulnerable to the system. What people seem to need most of all is support and interventions for their mental state, rather than criminalization of their behaviors that stem from a poor mental state. We know, especially in the last 7 or 8 years, that mental health has declined to a critical point. People are going to extremes in every possible way and have little tolerance for one another. I sometimes wonder to myself, who would want to live in a society where there is so much hostility? Where people say hateful things about and to one another, where people are self-centered and only care about themselves and maybe the people closest to them, if there is anyone left, where people mistreat others just for the sake of mistreating them, or they sadly think that it gives them some sort of power. Then I come to my senses and realize that this is pretty much the society that we live in now. That hostility comes from the minds of people who are disturbed mentally. Now, it's not always that they have a diagnosable condition, but that they are struggling with their mental state, which has actually become normal these days. Hostility and anger come from a mind that is unsettled and sees a threat at every turn. When we are in a peaceful, grounded state of mind, we see, yes, the world is full of challenge and hardship, but ultimately we can get through it. We see that it is important for us to be in communion with others and not treat them like enemies. Our greatest enemies are inside of us. The parts of our minds that tell us that we should be angry, greedy, envious, full of hubris, or prone to emotional attachment to things or ideas that are harmful. Those are the things that create filters for our eyes and cause us to see others as enemies. We have control of our faculties and not someone else. No one can make me angry. I choose how to react when someone does something that I don't like. And that's where it gets sticky. When we don't realize that we can control our minds, we let our minds control us. We react to things through our subconscious instead of making conscious choices about our behavior. When we are stressed or overwhelmed, we start to function at a base level that is devoid of intelligence. We forget about our ability to make choices. We shift into the basic functions of the mind, which is just determining what we like and what we don't like. We become like animals who do not have the same level of consciousness that we have and do not know how to make sophisticated decisions. Of course, some animals are smarter than others, but none of them can use their minds the way that human beings can. That's why we have to take care of them, our minds and animals. Operating on a basic level is not what we are meant for. We all, each and every one of us, has some level of intelligence that can make decisions that benefit more than just ourselves and or our immediate group of cohorts. Even if we have a low level of intelligence, we can learn and grow far beyond what we know. The best use of our intelligence is to serve our purpose in life, to walk our individual path. A human being's purpose in life is never to be cruel or to make life difficult for others. The Dalai Lama has said that the purpose of life is to be happy. If we carry hatred in our hearts, we can never be happy. When I look at statistics for women, the modern world seems like a place where happiness is hard to find. Now, some of these statistics may be triggering for some, so I just want to let you know before I share them. The World Health Organization reports that 1 in 3 women have been subjected to physical and/or sexual violence. That's 30% of women worldwide. The WHO also reports that nearly 3 in 4 children, or 300 million children, aged 2 to 4 years, regularly suffer physical punishment and/or psychological violence at the hands of parents and caregivers. In 2021, in the United States alone, at least 300,000 girls were reported as being abused, while 280,000 boys were reported. So clearly, girls are more at risk. 1 in 5 women report suffering sexual abuse between the ages of 0 and 17. The rates of depression among women is almost twice the rate of men, according to the National Institute for Mental Health. The NIMH also reports that the rate of mental illness is higher among women than it is among men. All of these statistics are disturbing, to say the least, yet somehow women find the strength to go on. And no wonder so many women seem to be on a quest to find love. We are taught that love will bring us so much deep joy. And it is true, love can bring us deep connection and joy, but we have to know the proper place to direct our love and the proper person to exchange it with. Many times I speak to women who are trying to make damaging relationships, whether with a friend, lover, family member, etc. They're trying to make these relationships work because they think they are in love or have love for a certain person. They suffer all kinds of abuse, physical, emotional, and mental, for the sake of that, in quotation marks, love. While talking to them, I sometimes think, she is suffering through all of this for what? To eke out what teensy tiny bit of attention and affection she can from someone who is clearly having trouble giving that teensy tiny bit to them. As human beings, we need more than that. When we settle for that, or even less, we end up in a place of such delusion that we waste all of our time and energy in creating further delusions to protect our hearts and our minds. Nobody wants to hurt. But if we allow ourselves that hurt, we save ourselves from suffering. So just to be clear, suffering is when we hold on to pain and relive it over and over. To experience hurt or pain is just a natural part of life. We cannot avoid it. But when we remain in a situation that causes us pain, that pain turns into suffering. A single trauma can also cause suffering, but it seems most of the time our resistance to moving on from a bad situation is the worst culprit. Suffering erodes our mental and emotional state of mind. It causes us to not take care of ourselves and lose our sense of hope. But woman, it is so important for us to stay connected with our sense of hope and channel it into positive action. Before we can really find our sense of hope, though, we must do the work to heal. We must look within ourselves and not be afraid to see the pain that hides there. I know it can be terrifying to even think about, and often it needs to be done gently and with care. But once we look at the shadow side of ourselves and realize that it is there to protect us from the things we couldn't handle at a particular time, rather than be afraid, we can become grateful and open to new possibilities. The things that we don't like about ourselves have come from an experience that we have had that has left us feeling insecure, vulnerable, or shameful. Those things get hidden away from our consciousness so that we don't have to see them and feel bad. If we understand that we, like everyone else, are prone to making mistakes and couldn't possibly prepare ourselves for everything we have to deal with in life, then we can be more compassionate toward ourselves. We wouldn't take on so much and have unrealistic expectations of ourselves. We don't have to handle, deal with, or accept everything that we encounter. We can choose not to participate. Most importantly, we can get help for the things we cannot handle, deal with, or accept. That is part of what it means to heal. To get help with doing the work of making ourselves better. If we do not heal, we end up stunting our own growth, or even worse, allowing ourselves to erode. Without healing, we see life through a filter of disappointment, pain, anger, sadness, all of the things that if we linger on too long in them, we lose our will to get better. Our mental and emotional health is just as important as our physical health. But as women, we tend to put them on the back burner. We are not taught to take care of them. In fact, it is the opposite. We are expected to endure because no one is looking out for our feelings. Sometimes other women will try to address our feelings, which is beautiful. But often those women are neglecting their own feelings in the process. If we all take care of our feelings, then we have the space to support others and help them with their feelings in a healthy way. Mental and emotional ailments lead to physical troubles. Trying not to judge, think of some of the most unhappy people in your life. Now, think of what you know about their physical health situations. The body doesn't want to go on if the mind and heart are damaged. Now, you may think that this is a chicken and egg situation. Perhaps they are so unhappy because their health is in such a poor state. But we know that health is psychosomatic, and we know that placebo effect is real. The mind has incredible influence over the body, So it's imperative to keep a healthy mind. Healing, of course, can pertain to our physical circumstances, but when we tend to our mental and emotional positions, everything else becomes easier. I think it would be so beneficial if, while dealing with the physical condition, we address the mental and emotional as well. Use all of our healing tools to make ourselves better. When we do the work to heal, we completely change our lives. The world becomes a brighter place and possibilities pop up all around us. We soften our outlook and let go of rigid beliefs that come from a desire to control. We trust that we are held in a safe place and that there is no need to be selfish, worried about how we will survive. There are so many magnificent ways to approach healing. Even in the medical field, so-called alternative, it always seems so silly to me that ancient forms of healing are called alternative when the way that we practice medicine in the West is relatively new. It is the alternative. Anyway, a holistic approach to healing, therapies that include energy and vibration, water, nature, focusing more on lifestyle and what we put in our bodies, the things we ingest, the food, drinks, pollutants in the air, things like that. These things are not new, but they are coming back into use in the mainstream for healing. As we move into this new age of healing, we have new opportunities to heal on multiple levels at once. By only addressing the physical, we are only treating the problem, but not healing it. That treatment is like a Band-Aid that works temporarily. Our ailments often start in the subtle, energetic levels, and when they are not addressed there, they move into the physical. The body carries so much from our past experiences that is held as energy. Once we release that tension, we can bring the body into homeostasis, and our health improves. Practices such as somatic therapy and yoga nidra can help with that. Yoga nidra is actually one of my favorite classes to teach. When we practice yoga nidra, we are releasing the threefold tensions, which are muscular, emotional, and mental tensions that we hold on to that ends up causing us all sorts of problems. By releasing these tensions in the body, we allow ourselves to fully relax, which leads to healing. So take care of yourself, woman. Be sure to heal before taking on new endeavors or new relationships. Be sure that you are in the proper place to do so in a healthy manner. When we heal, we become our best selves, our whole selves. Then, rather than wasting our time looking for something or someone to complete us, we find that we are already complete. So, right after I recorded the first segment of this episode, it was reported that a young woman shot and killed 6 people, 3 of them children, in a Tennessee school. When I read that, I could do nothing but cry and then become enraged. Only cognizant dissonance allows me to hold in my mind that our precious, innocent children are murdered in their schools on a regular basis, and we don't do anything about it. The fact that we go on with our lives without mass protest or mass strikes or just plain standing up to say we cannot stand by while our children are murdered at school, children are murdered at school. Not that our children are going somewhere that is expected to be dangerous, but school, where they spend the majority of their time and should always be protected and safe. We will get our asses out on the street to protest all kinds of things that we feel are injustice. But our children are literally being murdered at their schools, and hardly anyone has protested this. Parents are putting their kids on buses or driving them to school only for them to end up being gunned down by someone carrying an automatic weapon who has no regard for life. But where is our regard for our children's lives? Can we really be that self-centered? We are failing them on so many levels. And what about this young woman who perpetrated such a horrific act? As of this recording, nothing about her life has been released yet. It literally just happened. But what was so awful in this young woman's life that she felt she had no recourse but to go out and murder children? Why? Why did she not receive the help that she needed? Who let her suffer without being there to help her ease her pain? The first answer to that question that came to my mind is all of us. It absolutely breaks my heart to know that I live in a nation that does not protect its children. Even that young woman was at some point someone's child, is still someone's child. That sending a child to school can be an act of endangering their life. I am not going to get into discussions about gun laws versus human rights. It just becomes some inane circular argument. But I will say that somewhere, somehow, this young woman was struggling and was failed by society. Mental health was clearly an issue for her, like everyone who has perpetrated the same crime over and over again. This keeps happening. And what are we doing about mental health? How are we supporting people who need help? I don't mean what kind of legislation are we passing to address the issue. I mean, as an average American, what the hell are we doing? How are we treating people who we encounter in our daily lives? What are our expectations of the people closest to us? How do we show others that we care or that they are not alone? We are all struggling in one way or another. But if we all showed compassion to people, then life would be much easier for all of us. People are in survival mode, acute stress response, fight or flight mode. How are we working on healing ourselves instead of lashing out at the world? We need to heal our collective trauma of the last several years. The way to do that is to ensure that as many people as possible get the care they need. Whether it's joining a support group or going to a therapist, delving into real spirituality that is about love and not hate. Simply talking about mental health, making it a part of our daily routine, encouraging others to take care of their mental health, going to someone who practices a healing modality and working with them. Even if we do not have legislative support, we can do so much to support one another. Now that my rant is over, let's talk about herbs. Actually, I know I touched on some sensitive issues in my rant, and though I am not sorry for doing so, I am sorry if anything I said was hurtful to anyone. This is a huge issue, one of the biggest issues in the history of our nation, and we cannot let it continue the way it has gone thus far. Now to the herbs. Herbs are a special kind of magic, one of my favorite kinds of magic. We have this beautiful relationship with them. We tend to them, connect with them, and they support us by sharing their medicine with us and keeping us healthy. There are many lovely herbs that help us maintain our mental health by supporting the nervous system in different ways. The spinal cord, which runs through the center of the spine, and the brain make up our central nervous system. The spinal cord contains nerves and cells that carry messages from the brain to the rest of the body. The peripheral nervous system, which consists of many nerves that branch out from our central nervous system and run through the rest of the body, the arms, legs, fingers, toes, and organs. And within the peripheral nervous system is the somatic nervous system that controls our voluntary movements, and the autonomic nervous system, which controls our involuntary functions. So we have to take care of our nervous system in order to stay healthy. When we experience chronic or long-term stress, which many people are dealing with at this very moment, it has significant effect on the nervous system and the body. If connections between the nervous system and the brain are not in a healthy condition, it can lead to problems with how the brain processes information. In other words, mental health issues. Herbs have the wonderful ability to support the nervous system, in turn supporting our mental health. There are 4 main ways that herbs work on the nervous system. Some herbs are nerve tonics, and they rehabilitate and feed and strengthen the nervous system. These herbs are usually high in calcium, magnesium, B vitamins, and protein. They are also mild in action and can be taken over a long period of time. Now, some examples of nerve tonics are chamomile, that lovely, lovely herb, and skullcap, which is another herb I think I've talked about on this podcast before, as well as valerian and hops. Each of these herbs can be used in different ways. And if you've listened to this podcast before, when I've talked about herbs, you've heard me describe the different ways that herbs can be used. Now, my personal favorite is tea. I love a good homemade herbal tea. I drink them daily, all day long. I am a homemade herbal tea fanatic. One of the most powerful ways to take herbs, though, is through tinctures or glycerites. And though I am not going to get into exactly how to make a tincture or a glycerite, you can actually purchase them yourself. I prefer to make them because that's my thing. That's what I do. I'm an herbalist. But they are also available for purchase. Herbs can also be taken in capsule form. You can buy those as well, and you can make them. I have done that before. I've made herbal remedies in capsules. We can use that wonderful absorbent organ of the skin to take in herbs as well. So just by checking out the herbs that I have mentioned and the ones that I will mention going forward, you can look at different ways to take them if you'd like to do that. You can also feel free to contact me. You can email me, and I would love, love, love to help you with how to work with these herbs. So moving on, the next category of nerves for the nervous system are nerve sedatives. Now, these herbs help you relax. They also reduce pain and aid with sleep. So rather than deadening the nerve endings, they soothe and nourish nerves and muscle tissue. Also, part of this nerve sedative group are antispasmodic herbs. These herbs help relieve muscle spasms and cramping. So some examples of these herbs are St. John's wort, which you may be very familiar with. It has been in the mainstream for quite some time. There's also catnip, which you may also be familiar with, especially if you have a cat. There's lemon balm. She's one of my favorite herbs. California poppy, which I grew in my garden 2 years ago. And valerian, which I mentioned before, can also fit into this group because it is a wonderful herb for helping you get to sleep. The third category of herbs is Nervine demulcents. And these soothe and heal inflamed nerve endings. They have a gel-like consistency that coats and protects nerve endings. Examples of these herbs are oats, which if you really put some thought into it, when you have had experience with moist or wet oats, they do get a bit of a gel-like consistency. Comfrey is another herb in this category. Barley, which I love to make a good soup with, and flaxseed. So obviously oats, barley, and flaxseed, we use those a little differently than we would use other herbs. I mean, I have made teas with oats and as well as other parts of the plant, but barley and flaxseed, we use those primarily in cooking. The next and final category is nerve stimulants. Now, of course, stimulants are not recommended for nervous system disorders. In fact, they are usually contraindicated. Mild herbs that gently spark the nervous system are recommended. They increase circulation, provide nutrients, and increase vitality. Rather than provoking or agitating the system, they gently awaken it. Examples of these herbs, of gentle stimulant herbs, are peppermint, ginkgo, cayenne, ginger, rosemary, and sage. So that's all I wanted to share about herbs today. As if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you know how in love with herbs I am and how much I enjoy working with them and seeing their magic manifest. But I encourage you to please check out some of these herbs for yourself, and the ones that I mentioned that we typically cook with. Please think about, as you're using these herbs and you're cooking with them, think about the benefits that you're getting from them besides the flavor or enjoying the aroma of them. Please check out the show notes from this episode, as I will include all of the herbs that I've mentioned, as well as resources for purchasing the herbs if you'd like to. And I will also say one more time, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. So beautiful, woman. It is time for our tarot card reading for the week. So I've already checked in with the cards and given them our query. And our query today is about our mental health. What is it that we need to do to support our mental health? And I know I've given many things already, but let's see what the cards have to say about it. So I'm being told that this reading needs to consist of 6 cards, which I am laying out for us right now. 2 more. Okay, here we go. So our 6 cards have just been laid out. I'm going to put the rest off to the side in the box so they don't end up going everywhere. Okay, so here we are. So we have our 6 cards out. And the first one, this happened before, but I just have this, when I look at them, it seems like they're backward. I don't know what that's about, but let's see what that's about. Okay, anyway, we're going to read them this way. I have an idea of what it's about, but anyway, I'm going to read them this way anyway, and we'll see what happens when we get to the end. So our first card is the Strength card. Now, remember I asked what it is that we need to do in order to take care of or support our own mental health. And the first thing that comes about, again, is the Strength card. And what this card is telling us is that we need to be strong. And I hesitate in saying that because that message is always misunderstood. It's always taken the wrong way. And people often think that to be strong means to not allow yourself to cry or to hold in your feelings or to be stoic or all of these things. We all know what the traditional, I'm saying in quotation marks, way of thinking about strength or being strong. We all know what that way is. Now, what this card is telling me or telling us is that we need to be strong in the feminine way. We need to use our feminine energy to tap into our strength. And so what that means, which I love this, what that means is that we, like I said, tap into our feminine energy and use our emotional strength, our emotional maturity, our emotional stability in order to deal with things. So it's not about holding it in or, going into denial or pretending that we're not bothered by things. What it means, the medicine of this card is telling us that in order to be truly strong in a way that helps our mental health, we need to process our feelings, not pushing them away, but actually looking at them. I think I mentioned in this episode that we have to be able to look at our shadow side. That does not mean that we just lift the curtain and see that shadow, what's happening behind that shadow. What it means is sometimes, we have to do it slowly, we have to do it gently, but once we look at that shadow side, then we can move on into healing. The next card that comes to us is the Eight of Wands. And what this card is telling me is several things. One thing is that we need to find peace. We need to find places, actual physical places, not just places in our minds, but actual physical places where we can have peace and be in a peaceful state. It's so important. It's so important. I tend to seek that for myself. Again, if you've listened to this podcast before, you've heard me talk about different places that I've traveled to, simply for the sake of connecting with nature and for finding that peace, that deep connection with nature and that deep sense of peace. That is so important for our mental health. In addition to finding that place of peace, hopefully that place will include nature. So it's not about only finding a place like a temple or creating a space within your home. Some of us have meditation spaces or, spaces where we practice yoga, or some of us even have temples within our homes. It's not about that, although it can be about that. Let me clear that up. That's absolutely a beautiful option. However, what this card is saying right now is that hopefully we can find places within nature, because nature has so much to give us in terms of our mental health. I know I've talked about on the show before how in shamanism we recognize that trees and all of nature emit this beautiful energy called Sami. And it is refined energy that just rejuvenates us. It's like, when we're breathing in and exchanging and feeling that energy, it's actually like, I want to say taking a vitamin, but it's so much more than that. So much more than that. So spending time in nature in a peaceful place, or a place that helps us feel peaceful, that helps us feel rejuvenated, that helps us feel as, the truth that we are part of everything. We are connected to everything around us. Now, the next card that comes up is the Justice card. And of course, when we think about justice, especially these days, we think about fighting and getting out and protesting and marching. And of course, obviously, I believe that that has a place. If you've listened to the earlier segment of the podcast, that all has a place. However, what justice means in this reading is that we find a sense of balance. So we may see a situation or even be part of a situation that feels unjust to us. However, whether externally it is unjust or not, what we need to do is find a sense of balance within ourselves. That will change our perspective, and it will also help us in a much healthier way correct the injustice. If we are all riled up and enraged, and sometimes I understand that that's what it takes to correct an injustice. But if we're so far in that realm where we are only working through emotion rather than allowing ourselves to use our I don't want to say anger, but that is kind of what I mean. Using that anger or that forcefulness is more to the point. Yeah, forcefulness or assertiveness, using that without so much emotion attached to it, then we can make so much more progress. We can really connect with the sense of justice. So finding that balance and being strong and not backing down from the desire and the work to find balance. So what that means, why I'm saying that is, we have to be protective of our sense of balance. We have to be able to say no when we need to. We have to be able to disengage when we need to. We cannot all get out and protest and fight for everything. As we have seen over the last few years, over the last several years, is that when we all go out and try to protest and go out all the time and all protest for the same things, and, we all of us who did that, experienced burnout. And then what does that do? That leads to a place of complacency, which I believe is where most people are, which is why we're not fighting and standing up for the things that we need to. Okay, the next card that comes up is the Page of Swords. And the Page of Swords is telling me that it's also reflecting that sense of nature, but it's telling me, or telling us, I keep saying me, that we need to be in communion with nature, kind of what I talked about a few cards ago. We need to be in communion with nature so that we feel that deep connection with it, which is what helps give us strength. Now, the other thing that this card is saying is that we also need to connect with our sense of joy, our sense of playfulness, our sense of being young again, our youth. With all of the stresses that we have all been through, that many people are still going through, we can lose that sense of freedom, that sense of playfulness, that sense of innocence, and we need to reconnect with that. It's so important to help us maintain our mental health. Now, the fifth card that comes up is the Wheel of Fortune. So many things in this card as well. Most of it about health, most of it about taking care of our health. And what this card is saying to us is there are many, 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 many different ways that we can take care of our health. We just need to put our energy toward that. We just need to make that a daily a daily part of our lives. Our mental health, like I said before, is just as important as our physical health. And, there are many people who go to gyms every morning or run or bike or, do whatever their exercise routine is. But we also need to have a routine for our mental health. Meditate, even just, again, go out into nature, just take a walk in nature every day. How about just sitting down and being quiet, turning off all of our devices, opening a book or not opening a book, but having time in our lives that is not filled with the overstimulation that we experience in the world. Just giving ourselves some peace. There's so many ways. And again, I've already listed many ways earlier in the podcast about, how we can maintain and support our own mental health. So please, of course, I didn't give all the ways. I don't even know all the ways, but please do yourself a favor and find out the ways that work for you. And the final card of this reading is the Five of Swords. And the Five of Swords is saying several things. One of them is something I've talked about quite a bit on various episodes of this podcast, and that is about finding community. We cannot exist completely alone. That's unhealthy for us. We need to be with others. We need to connect with others who share the same deep purposes in life, who are looking at the same things in life that we are, that are important to us. Not just the people that we have the same likes and dislikes with, I like to eat this certain food, or I like to go out to dinner, so I'm going to join this group to go out to dinner. That's a nice thing. However, it's so much more fulfilling for our minds and our hearts if we're spending time with people who are looking at the same deep things that we are looking for, whether that's spirituality, whether that's some cause that is deeply important to us. Again, it's not about superficial things. It's about the things that are deeply important to us. In addition to that, this card is also saying that we need to let go of the people and the things in our lives that are causing us strife, that are causing us pain, that are causing us to go into that mode of suffering. We need to let go of those things. We need to walk away from them so that we can protect our own mental health. That is so important. And sometimes when we walk away from those people or things, we can come back to them when we are in a healthier state. Other times may not be the case. It may be that we need to walk away or drop those people or things, or drop those things, walk away from those people for good. And that's okay. We all make transitions in our lives. We all grow at different rates in our lives, and we have to do what works for us mentally so that we can begin to take care of ourselves in that way and hopefully encourage others to do the same. So that is our reading for the week. I hope that something out of that reading was beneficial, helpful, valuable maybe for you. And I hope that you find the ways to heal. You find ways to take care of your mental health. We have reached the end of this episode, and I'm so grateful to you for listening and being a part of this experience with me. If you are not a member of our Patreon community, please check us out at patreon.com/womanonherpath. That's patreon.com/womanonherpath. Come check out our community. We have monthly gatherings, actually twice a month. We have monthly gatherings. One is a discussion of the topics that I talk about on the podcast. The other is actually a group energy reading. In addition to those two gatherings that we have from time to time, we've already started, but we will continue to have yoga nidra sessions, brief yoga nidra sessions, because I know, I don't want to take up all of your time. And we will also do other classes as well. Actually, this evening we are having a restorative/yin yoga class, and we will have meditation and many, many things coming up. So if you can join us, please do check out our Patreon page. And if not, that's okay too. I will continue to speak to you once a month. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye. I put my baby on the bus this morning, then came home and kneeled before my altar with tears in my eyes, begging the Supreme Lord to please protect my child because I have no way of doing so myself. My mind was racing as I walked back to the house. Did I do the right thing? Is my baby going to be safe? Should I quit my job and homeschool my baby? Single mothers have to work. I could always move in with Mama, but her apartment building for ages 65 and up does not allow babies to live there. Maybe my friend Jane and I could live together. Two single mothers raising their children together and working part-time jobs in shifts. But would we survive with two part-time jobs and two full-time children who need food and clothes? Where is my phone? Is the ringer on? I need to be on alert. As I drive to work, I will keep the local news on the radio and pray every mile of the way. Sitting at my desk, I cannot concentrate, checking my phone for notifications from the local news app and email for messages from the school. When was the last time they had an active shooter drill? And will my baby remember what to do? What about Miss Rogers and Mr. Bill? Can I trust them to keep my baby safe? Brenda, who sits at the desk across from me, has a cousin who lost her baby at school last year, just 2 states away from ours. I put my baby on the bus this morning, and now I feel like I am going to be sick. Thank you so much for listening to this show. I hope you found something useful. Like everything in life, we can take what we need and leave the rest. Please feel free to contact me with comments or questions at womanonherpath@gmail.com.